always happy when people of other religions want to know more about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also called Mormonism. Thank you for your interest in this. And I think that interreligious dialogue and understanding is a real foundation for the world. So briefly, I'd like to give you just a few minutes of history, a little taste of LDS beliefs, and then some more contemporary issues that the church is facing now. With history, three things to keep in mind, three really eras or epochs of LDS history. The first is persecution, or the first is founding, the second is persecution, and the third is assimilation. So if you can go founding, persecution, assimilation, you will have a very, very basic overview of the course of Mormon history. So let's start with the beginning, which is the founding. We're looking at the 1820s and 1830s as the period for the founding of the church. In fact, right now, 2023 is the bicentennial of one of those formative events. And that was that Joseph Smith, who was the founding prophet of the LDS church, is said to have received a visit from an angel named Moroni, who just showed up one night in Joseph Smith's bedroom and gave him instructions about what to do and where to find what became the Book of Mormon. So essentially the sacred text, the founding sacred text, in addition to the Bible, and some later revelations of the church that are the scriptures of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I should say, as in terms of positionality, I am a Latter-day Saint. I'm on the more progressive stream of things, as we'll see when we get to the end, when we talk about more contemporary issues, but I'm a believing and practicing Mormon. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, so that was the founding, 1823. Joseph Smith has this visit. 1826, the Book of Mormon is published. And then in 1830, the official founding of the church happens. So that's all coming up in terms of bicentennials that you'll be hearing about probably in the news. So Mormonism is a very young religion, and I think that that's something that's important to keep in mind. This is not a religion that stems from the Protestant Reformation, giving us, more than 500 years of history. It's not Catholicism with 2,000 years of history. And so some of those growing pains become evident. I think what is important to recognize in these three contours of Mormon history is how much change has happened in a relatively short period of these roughly 200 years. So the founding period leads to a period where Mormons are persecuted because they're so different. We'll get to that in a minute, why they're so different. And so they move from place to place within the United States. And so they're starting in upstate New York, and some of these things also happen in Pennsylvania, and then moving to Ohio, moving to Missouri, where they are essentially involved in a real war, not just a skirmish, but an actual really, really difficult period in terms of dealing with their Missouri neighbors, get kicked out of Missouri and move to Illinois, Nauvoo, Illinois, in the western part of Illinois by the Mississippi, where they receive a special charter from the state. And they think, hey, we're here now. This is it. This is great. We have our place to build Zion. Building Zion turns out to be so successful, though, that they're getting immigrants from Europe. They're having converts from neighboring communities, and in fact, all over the eastern United States. And so Nauvoo grows to become the second largest town in the state of Illinois, and they have a militia, which is very intimidating for the neighboring towns. Eventually, this culminates in Joseph Smith being assassinated along with his brother in 1844. And so that is kind of the harbinger of the Mormon exodus from Illinois. And you may have heard of the Westward Trek, which is essentially Mormons leaving Western Illinois in 1846, and then by the summer of 1847, settling in Utah, which does turn out more or less to be a final place. Salt Lake City, Utah becomes the center place of the LDS Church. So that's the second part of Mormon history to talk about. And then the third is assimilation. So one of the distinguishing features of Mormonism in the 1840s, 50s, and beyond was polygamy. And this was very controversial. It wasn't public knowledge until the 1850s. And once it became public knowledge, Mormons were the subject of a lot of vitriol on the part of the United States for these unusual practices. My dissertation, for example, looked at Protestant women missionaries who went to Utah in the late 19th century, including some Episcopalian women, in order to save Mormon women from this terrifying blight on the nation called polygamy. All of those efforts were largely unsuccessful. Mormons continued to be unrepentant polygamists, but in 1890, the pressure from the government became so intense. By that point, the government had essentially confiscated a lot of Mormon property, had imprisoned many Mormon men for practicing polygamy or cohabitation. And so in 1890, polygamy was officially disbanded on the part of the church. In some cases, it went underground, and some of those communities continued to try to practice it. But in 1904, the church made it very clear that anyone who would continue practicing polygamy would be excommunicated. And that has been the official stance of the church ever since 1904. Mormons do not practice polygamy. There are these offshoot groups, including the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which was led by Warren Jeffs. You may have heard of him in the news, but they are not Latter-day Saints in terms of being members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it's a point of clarification that is important to a lot of Latter-day Saints or Mormons.